Yeah, hi all. I just thought to give you a quick sort of your update in regard to what I'm seeing out there at the moment. Obviously, there's a lot sort of going on, but I thought I'd sort of break it down into 4 to 5 sort of themes and get people thinking out there. Look, theme number one is what I call Wall Street versus Main Street. That is basically the big end of town, equities versus the ordinary worker. What are we seeing at the moment? Look, equities are up pretty damn sharply. In fact, they're up again overnight. Central banks have been out there, doing whatever it takes. Yes, you got to ask a few questions regarding how far should they go to protect the weak. A lot of these airlines, for example, it looks like they're going to be getting bailouts. Central banks have been buying government and corporate debt. It looks like US oil companies are going to be the next. Whereas you look at what is the direct support to small businesses? Well, that's limited. Now, if I have a look at Main Street economic indicators, you have a look at the oil market. Okay, it's bouncing around from the sort of day to day, but you've got an industry in long-term decline. Why bail it out? And oil prices are pretty damn weak. Why? Because it's a sign of the demand destruction we're seeing around the globe. Unemployment, another Main Street barometer, rapidly rising everywhere around the globe. And it sort of begs the question in regard to who's getting this incredible stimulus that we're seeing around the globe. And I start to think about, could we see some major pushback against capitalism or what we call market-driven forces? Because what we're seeing at the moment is that the more the central banks intervene, the more they're actually distorting the pure market and sowing the seeds on what you could sort of argue is the last sort of legs of capitalism. Point number two, the good news. Look, businesses we're starting to open up and we're adapting. We've obviously gone from a 4 to a 3+. I'm starting to see the traffic volumes are starting to increase around the country, which is a pretty timely economic indicator. But in all fairness, they're still hellishly online. I took the kids out yesterday. Subway online, didn't want to wait in the McDonald's queue, but first I'd noticed that you can now order these sort of things online. Restaurants are going to alternative service channels. We're seeing businesses come up with tap or what's called snap and go. But if I have a look at the construction sector, you're out there and you're back at work, but boy, the costs of this new model and the productivity hit, the efficiencies as a distancing style model gets enforced is absolutely massive. What we're also starting to see is a bit more tension across society. People are starting to, I wouldn't say outright flout the rules, but we're starting to see more and more examples where people are just starting to see, well, look, I just want it, which sort of tells me we can't see, we can't stay at a level 3 for too long. Look, interesting to see if you look at the curves in regard to COVID between New Zealand and Australia, basically the same results. New Zealand took a level 4, basically shut most of the economy down to achieve it. Australia has achieved similar results, but they had an effective level 2 or 3. So a lot of businesses are still open. Theme 3, just the cash crunch. What am I seeing out there at the moment? I still don't think politicians are looking at the numbers correctly. They still think about this economy as being 320 billion. It's not. It's a 700 billion plus turnover economy. So it's like 60 billion a month. So even at a level 3, where the assumption is that the economy's got 25% still shut down, you multiply 25% of 60 billion, and you still get a hellishly big number in regard to what the foregone revenue actually is. There's 500,000 firms across New Zealand whose turnover is less than 50 million. And they've got combined turnover of 400 billion. There's 400,000 firms with turnover less than $1 million. There's lots of mid-tier firms, 5,700 with turnover between 10 million and 100 million. They have size but they're not really that big. Yeah, all these firms, their funding options are the bank or the government-backed 500,000 loan. Now, I'm starting to see a lot more reporting of challenges in regard to firms accessing the government loan scheme. In all honesty, the more I've looked at that, it looks like a Kiwi Build Part 2. There's 61,000 firms involved in the construction sector. That's almost as many firms as the entire agriculture, forestry, and fishing sectors combined. 27,000 firms in retailing, 22,000 in accommodation and food service. Your big firms have got access to capital markets. Your SMEs are reliant on the bank or more so on cash flow. Yeah, how do they prepare a cash forecast in the current environment? Your glass half full. Yeah, we're easing down through the alert levels, but the bottom line is that this cash flow fallout or the squeeze is going to continue for a long time. Look, number 4, yeah, I'm starting to think about some learnings or things that I'm starting to think about on the other side, because every time we go through a pretty big recession or downturn, you need to think about how you need to change the model. You know, what do we do after the GFC? Well, we made sure that the banking sector was going to be a lot more ready or prepared for the next downturn, and that's been a really big thing. Yeah, one of the learnings we need to think about this time around is obviously the readiness of the health system, and we'll look at that. But if you look at who's really getting smacked out of this, it's small businesses, and we need to start to ask them questions about what is their readiness or what do we need to do on the other side. And just a couple of small things, right, as an illustration. My personal view is that I think we need a national representative business group for small businesses. Yeah, Business New Zealand, these sort of organisations, all due respect, they're captured by the big end of town. So Chamber of Commerce, yeah, they've got regional representation, but they did not have national representation. You know, what we need is this big representative body that have got the muscle, the clout, you know, to really step in there and represent the entire small business community across New Zealand. Now, the other thing that I'm thinking about is that one of the reasons that small businesses have got into financial difficulty is obviously because of the lockdown, which has been, you know, bigger than Ben Hur. But a lot of it is they just haven't had enough, you know, cash readiness. Yeah, the balance sheets haven't been in good shape. Yeah, so I've got a real big bugbear about, you know, what's called financial literacy. And you know, if we're thinking about preparing small businesses for the next downturn, i.e. 10 to 15 years out, and let's start to think about building better money capability across the next generation of business owners. Yeah, who is that? It's the kids. Yeah, so let's make managing money a life skill as opposed to just something that you can do as an option within schooling. Your final thing, you know, I think I've spoken before about political ideology needs parked, and to get the New Zealand economy, you know, back up and running on the other side. You know, some of the stuff I'm seeing at the moment, wow. You know, I've seen Phil Twyford come out and tell councils not to freeze rates. Yeah, that's right. He's out there telling councils to get out there and tax the community, tax businesses, and tax households more during the deepest economic downturn we've seen since the 1930s. Yeah, the Deputy Prime Minister is saying we could see the rebirth of manufacturing. I agree that we're going to see, you know, manufacturing make a little bit of a comeback, but we've got to be really careful here in regard to where we draw the line. He's talking about supporting manufacturing, provided they're not 15% less uncompetitive compared to the equivalent global product. Well, that might be fine, but I've got a simple question. Who's going to pay the additional 15%? Yeah, it's all fine and dandy to support local jobs, but remember, someone's going to pay for the stuff on the other side. And if we gear up the manufacturing sector locally, fine and dandy, but come on, yeah, they've got to be a lot more cost competitive with global peers than having a 15% wedge. because someone pays for that stuff on the other side, and it's consumers. Will we be prepared to accept 15% higher building costs, materials, because they're locally made, or as opposed to globally sourced? When push comes to shove, what's expect consumers are going to push back. We're seeing the boots getting put into dairying. Well, I'll tell you what, at the moment we need the farmers, we need the cows. Seeing a lot of talk in regard to infrastructure spend. The priority is about wellness and jobs. Well, what about value for money and productivity? We want that government borrowing, and there's a lot of money going out the door. We want that money to be well spent. If we're borrowing money, we want to get a dividend on the other side. That dividend is going to come in the form of a more productive and dynamic economy. So we need a lot more long-term thinking. My personal view is that we're now starting to enter what I call the rubber hit the road sort of zone, where central government needs to have a pretty clear plan. And behind the scenes, I'm getting a little bit concerned in regard to their ability to execute. Hat tip, their crisis management stuff has been remarkable. It's been really good. I know there's been some critics out there, but broadly, they've executed that sort of stuff really well. The challenge going forward is that how do we embrace change, and how the government is going to lead and execute around that. And I still have a lot of questions, and I'm getting very concerned that political ideology is starting to come to the forefront as opposed to a lot of common sense.
Who realistically can establish a small business council of sorts? Like, where does that come from?
I think it's got to come from small businesses themselves.
Yeah.
And probably in conjunction with the biggest representative across small businesses is Xero.
Huh. Yeah.
Or a couple of organisations like that.
Yeah.
Because at the moment, what we've got all these sort of fiefdoms, chambers of commerce, all these various representative bloody groups, but we don't have a national voice out there.
No.
It's actually, and even if you look at the Small Business Council that Stuart Nash pulled together, there's no one in that bloody thing that's running a small business. It's just ridiculous.
That's difficult.
It's just blatantly absurd. Well, you've got the Bankers Association on it. You've got the CFO of Xero and a whole lot of other people. But do you have a couple of people who actually get out there and run a small business? No. It's absurd.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. And who ends up, if I'm thinking about that construction piece of all this dropped productivity and cash squeeze and the cost now to build what they were currently building, who the hell ends up carrying that baby? Because I would say most contracts, they can't put their pricing up. Where does that get absorbed?
Ideally, we make up for it with the more efficient, dynamic, productive sector.
Yeah.
Realistically, how the hell is that going to take place?
Yeah, certainly not fast enough. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Even 2 weeks ago, we had the panel. I don't know that you stayed online for that, but Grant and his team who are doing some really clever stuff and putting up houses pretty quick without trying to go to a off-site manufacturing model. What he's doing is great, and he could tell everybody, here's what I did, but it's taken him 5 years to work out how to do those things. And on each house, they just fine-tune, and that he's down to trying to save, a couple of hours per house, which nobody normally cares about. He's, started at, well, can we save a week, or can we save 3 days, and then can we save a day by doing this? And now it's down to, that saves 3 hours. Well,
yeah, well, that's cool. I spoke about that last time. a ruthless obsession with microeconomics.
Yeah.
The small things.
Yeah.
Right? You get a whole lot of those small things and you add them up, and then eventually they become really big.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's breaking down the nuts and bolts and really thinking, Christ, I've just got to, take stuff out of here, a little bit out of here. And so when you do the final numbers, you think, boy, that's a big number.
Yeah. And it's interesting because that's where we sit. Like our business, the products that we're trying to promote as a package is we're trying to shift standard construction. There's a saying about not adding the new to the old, not replacing the old for the new, but just adding the new to the old and constantly improving. And we've always come across the way that you might have a great product, but if it completely changes the way the builder has to build, we're never going to shift the market. You might influence a handful of people, but what we need to do is feed the builder with innovations that work with what he's currently doing, that he can slowly improve, as opposed to, like SIP panels, great, got their limitations. You have to completely design around them, but that's never actually going to become the mainstream type of construction. You're not going to have all the builders out there all of a sudden stop doing what they're doing and start doing that. But we can slowly go, well, how about the framing that you use? What if you start doing it like this? How about you start doing your slab like this? Or how about you start using insulation that does this? And product by product and piece by piece, start shifting what they're doing, because we're trying to essentially work with the grain, because we know that you're not going to get builders to change, massive amounts of what they're doing. You've got to work with what they're doing, but bring in the improvements. And that's still, it sounds like a small thing, but it's a bloody mission.
Well, it's across, I look at a whole lot of things. Should we have been doing a lot more Zoom type meetings? Yes. Were we? No. Pre-COVID. Were we buying what we should have been buying online? No. Even things now, like what we're doing in regard to eating out, in regard to the alternatives. Yeah. The fact that I turned up to Subway yesterday with my kids, and because we drove past and saw they're open, I thought, oh shit, we're going to wander in. No, I can't wander in. Had to stand out bloody side, and took me 10 minutes to bloody get the app downloaded and sign in, get my credit card loaded up and that sort of stuff. But now I'm good to go. So the next time that you order Subway, we're going to do it from the house. Yeah. I'm just going to drive down. Yeah. And it'll just be a little bloody box, and I'll pick the damn thing up, and away you go. Yeah. There'll be no queue I need to line into. So we're starting to learn. We're starting to evolve. Yeah. It's stuff that we should have been doing anyway. And that's one of the big messages here is that, I use that term at the primary update today, never waste a crisis. Right? You're going to see the smart ones are going to adapt, and are going to be breaking down their businesses thinking, shit, I just need to change. Yeah. What do I need to do? Because the customer base is going to be different.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. And I think that the construction sector has still got no idea what that's going to look like. Because the last few years, there's been one message, and that's been build affordable, which has meant build as small as we can get away with, on as little land as we can get away with, as cheap as we can do it. And I think that's going to shift, because I think people's requirements all of a sudden are going to shift, and they're going to go, actually, it's not going to work. I can't live in 60 square meters. Not if the kids are doing more stuff from home, and we're not out now.
Really good. Well, here's a classic example, right? If working from home is going to take off, and I think now the Luddites who have been against that, just park them. Their arguments are toast. I'm hearing, from a couple of big major corporates, doesn't matter what alert level we are going to, their working assumption they're not going back into the office until June or July.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Yeah.
Right? Yeah, so you think about, so all of a sudden, what are the demands for a different house, i.e. square metre, is just fundamentally shift. You need space. You can't be in the same room de facto running a business when you've got bloody 2 kids running around, and so the priorities or the design factors are going to fundamentally shift. If you sit there and think about, all this in New Zealand in the last 2018, there's 120,000 foreign students we brought in. Well, about 60 odd thousand of those were in Auckland. Well, we shoved them in this little bloody box in Auckland. Well, don't need that anymore.
Yeah.
You think about businesses as they work more for home. We're going to see commercial lease market fundamentally shift. Vacancy rates are going to go up, right? Yeah. So you think about what does that mean for those buildings that are there, existing capital stock? We're going to turn them into accommodation. Same with the hotels that have got low vacancy rates, right? But you think about this. This is fundamentally a different market in regard to what we're going to be servicing. So all of a sudden, if I look at building demand, residential stuff, and I know a lot of residential builders are out there competing for government money, and I saw an article in the Herald yesterday, infrastructure versus residential, and residential says they employ more people. It's bollocks. Why the hell would we be building more houses when migration is going to zero and foreign students are going to be bugger all? Housing shortages is cured, right? We need to start to think about, the stock we've got, making sure that stock is fit for purpose in regard to what our economic needs are.
Yep.
Different conversations.
The one thing I did think was, when Winston was kind of bragging about Foreign Affairs Ministry bringing 40,000 Kiwis home, I was like, shit, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of, returning migration, essentially. Where have they all gone? I mean, they're probably in quarantine in the hotel still, but where are they going to go,
Yeah, but a lot of those would just be travellers that were stranded overseas.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
so existing premises, they come back home. So if you look at visitors in New Zealand, there's about 4 million a year. Overseas, we do about 3 million trips.
Yep.
So we're a net tourism consumer in New Zealand.
Yeah.
A lot of those people just needed to get home. There's a lot of talk about all these Kiwis overseas wanting to rush back home. Yeah, that's fine. Apart from you still need a job.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think you're going to be rushing out of where you are if you don't have a job to come home to.
What I think is interesting. It would be interesting to see if the urban planning then starts to shift, and all of a sudden urban sprawl becomes more viable, because there'd been talk about it in the past when you go, okay, big picture, long term, people are Ubering, they don't have a personal car, they're jumping in a bloody drone and they can be anywhere for a meeting, in half an hour. So all of a sudden they don't need to live close to the city. They can buy a house out in the country and have some space and then jump in this thing, So there was long-term picture, but it did shift. That picture of kind of going, okay, the way we use vehicles is going to free up a ton of land, a ton of parking spots, kind of roads, all that sort of thing. But almost what this has done is gone, well, essentially what we've realised is that we actually just don't need to travel that much, regardless of what we travel in. If we were all starting to work from home more, then there's just less travelling, full stop. And so then you come back to this place, well, actually, living an hour out of the city isn't so bad if I've only got to do that trip once or twice a week. I wonder whether councils will adapt to that and stop trying to intensify so much and open up the borders a bit more.
Yeah, you got a couple of things to think about there. Look, if you can work an hour out of Auckland, why can't you work in Wanganui?
Yep.
Right. So if you have a look at house prices to Auckland are 9 times incomes. There's 6 across the rest of New Zealand. Like some regions are 4 to 5. And one of the big reasons that regions outperformed the cities in the past 2 years was a pure valuation play. They were just cheaper. Now, the regions I think will hold up a little bit better because they're more rural connected, i.e. producers of food. So the unemployment rates rises are going to be less stark. But the other thing, which in some ways you can argue the case that this should drive more inner city intensification. Why? Because you're going to have all these buildings that are going to be sitting there doing bloody nothing. Right? If you're the owner of this sort of stuff, you'll have debt on the bloody thing. You can't leave it sitting there as a non-income generating asset. What are you going to think about doing? You're getting a tenant in. It's going to be helplessly hard. We're actually going to need the local government, I think, to be quite open in regard to thinking about the zoning of these commercial sort of things in regard to what we can do. Give them alternative uses. Turn them into apartments, CBD style living.
But also bringing in that piece of lifestyle. So, not 60 square meter apartments, they're 100 square meter apartments that you can actually live in, and maybe there's some shared facilities that are actually for entertainment, since that's
well that whole younger generation is right up on the shared space, these sort of things, but it's about getting a product that's fit for purpose in a different evolving market. If I have a look at what tends to go on when you go through a big crisis like this, is that the peripheral areas tend to take the bigger hits. So if you look at London during the GFC, it was the surrounding suburbs, out of London, that took the bigger hits, not the inner city. And I think we'll probably see a little bit of the same of that this time around.